Thank you for listening and supporting the Daily Memphian. Sign up for one of our many free newsletters and breaking news alerts at dailymemphian.com/email to receive the latest local news stories impacting our community. Our weekly newsletters cover everything from sports to arts and culture, business, food, and more, along with daily updates of all the news we publish each day. Sign up or manage your email preferences at dailymemphian.com/email.
I'm Bill Dries with the Daily Memphian, and this is On the Record. We record this Tuesday, May 17th, 2022. Joining us is Shelby County Commissioner Michael Whaley, who is chairman of the Commission's Budget Committee, which began budget hearings earlier this month on County Mayor Lee Harris's $1.6 billion consolidated county budget proposal. All of that to be funded with not all of that, but most of that to be funded with a county property tax rate of $3.39 with an extra 9/10 beyond that. And we'll talk about that in particular in just a bit. First, Mr. Chairman, how go the budget hearings so far?
Well, hi, Bill. I appreciate you having me on. And yes, we are in the thick of budget season. We had our first budget hearing last week after we received the proposed budget. And the purpose for that budget hearing was to be able to hear from all of the countywide offices and other elected officials who have a component in the consolidated county budget, to be able to hear specific requests that they may have had, that some of which were included, some of which were not included in the proposed budget. I thought those hearings went well, and we'll continue again on Wednesday of this week with additional budget hearings and discussion around both the tax rate itself, but also the general operating budget as well as the CIP budget.
So what, if anything, are you hearing that commissioners might want to change in the mayor's spending plan?
Well, we'll find out tomorrow. I know certainly, there are commissioners that have different initiatives that they would wish to champion. And, my focus going into this year as chairman of the budget committee was to, have a smooth, structured process so that we had clear opportunities to both hear from entities within county government and those outside, but also be able to hear from commissioners in terms of what they may propose to change in the budget. So tomorrow's committee meeting will go a long way to see what additional items may be amended in this coming budget. Right.
And of course, the county commission has a certain amount of money that is set aside for community enhancement grants. And it's allocated with a certain amount for each commissioner, and the full body votes on those grant proposals from each individual commissioner. On the grants, there is always some discussion about whether the controls are tight enough on this money and whether there is a better way to do this than a certain amount per commissioner. What do you see as the state of those discussions this budget season?
That's a good question. I've never been chair of that particular committee, and I know there are certainly commissioners that have been more deeply engaged in the criteria for how that program is executed. All I can really speak to is for my own allocation, what's helped me is being able to have a more structured criteria by which to analyze those, because we get a lot more, as you may imagine, we get a lot more requests than we have available funding. And so it's important, I think, to narrow that down. And I've tried to focus on, what neighborhood groups may need within my district, try to focus on organizations that support, quality education or quality of life issues. But I think those criteria vary from commissioner to commissioner. And certainly I think it'd be hard to agree on a universal criteria, though I think it's really important that we have an accurate accounting of the categories in which these grants are being invested in, as well as accountability measures to ensure that the projects that are being supported are achieving the desired results that were included in the proposal when they were first submitted to the county commission.
And are we talking about, in terms of this budget proposal, is it still $2.6 million at $200,000 per commissioner?
That's my understanding of where I don't anticipate any change to the program going into next year. Although, of course, as we get into more budget hearings, we may see an attempt to change that one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. Now to the county tax rate and an explanation. The county property tax rate currently is $3.45. The tax rate proposed by the mayor is $3.39 with an extra 9 on there. So 3.399 based on the state controller's office ruling that the property value appeals allowance used to calculate the $3.45 rate a year ago at this time ultimately was set too high. There wasn't as much of a drop in property values from those appeals as was anticipated. And this isn't unique. The city of Memphis property tax rate has gone under these same conditions and the same ruling from the controller's office from $2.71 to $2.70. What is unique here is the county tax bills that will go out once this budget season is completed, one way or the other, do not have the ability to print a property tax rate that goes beyond dollars and cents, meaning the county commission has to make a decision on whether to round the rate the mayor based his budget on, 3.399, round that down to $3.39 or up to $3.40. So how did I do there?
That was very good. Very well done. I think one of the questions I've gotten, and maybe you have as well, is, what does that mean to the average taxpayer, the average residential property taxpayer? And so I've done a little calculation that may be helpful in terms of what this actually means. Okay. For someone who, and for the sake of this exercise, we'll just take a property that's appraised at $200,000, a residential property at $200,000. And the difference for that fraction of a penny would be 50 cents a year. So if, for example, if we took the 3.399 and rounded that to 3.40, the additional tax due would be 50 cents a year on a property that's appraised at $200,000. That is essentially kind of what it shakes out to. And I think it's also important to recognize what the difference in tax may be between this current year at 3.45 and whether we're at 3.40 or 3.39 will amount to about $25 to $30 less than is being paid this year on that same hypothetical property that's appraised at $200,000.
All right. And for the county commission, while that information is helpful, you all are also dealing with a balanced budget and the total amount of revenue that it creates. So what do those dollar figures look like? If you round up, how much extra revenue do you get? If you round down, how much revenue do you lose?
So the total value of the penny across the county is a little more than 2.3 million. And so if you looked at 9/10 of a penny, that amount is about 2.1 million. And then if you're looking at just that 1/10, that represents 240,000. And so going from that, the presented budget, which was the 3.399, if you round it up to 3.40, that's an additional 240,000, which again is about 50 cents a year for someone with a property appraised at $200,000. But if we go down, so we go from 3.399 to 3.39, that would represent a decrease in revenue of about $2.1 million.
Okay. All right. Now, the big question, the state controller's office, of course, is very strict about these kind of things. So if you round up to $3.40, do you have to call it a tax hike?
Well, we would be required to follow the process if one wants to exceed the recertified rate, or in this case, the recertified recapture rate. So there would be the same process where there's a public hearing, which would be likely a normal commission meeting. If there's a desire to do that, to round up the fraction of the penny.
Okay, and it would have to be a separate vote on that 1/10 of it.
It would be a separate vote, and I think it's unique this year because it's a recapture rate, because the tax rolls have been certified already, and so the property values have already been set, and by the nature of that, likely for nearly all property taxpayers will pay less next year than this year, even with the higher property values that I think we're seeing, across the county and across the country.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there are 7 votes, or at this point, do you count 7 votes to raise the county property tax rate above $3.40? Because in the past budget seasons, the commission has had proposals for tax hikes that have ultimately didn't have those votes, but someone on the commission saw fit to propose that. Is that likely to happen this year?
I'm not sure about that. I mean, I think we've really got to balance, I think, both making sure we're delivering, quality service and the things that we are responsible for and what we do, but also being sensitive to the taxpayer and making sure that we're being good stewards of those dollars. So I think, this year, everyone is facing, increased costs across the board, not, certainly for homeowners, but also for the county itself. And so there's a increase in cost that the county's got to cover, but also, folks at home. And so I think we've got to be sensitive to that as well. And my position on this has been, we've got to first hear what's in the budget. We've got to hear what the proposals are, what the options are, before we lock ourselves into the property tax revenue rates. And we're still just beginning that process. So, what I said in the last meeting, even before that, is that, I'm not sure now is the time that we want to change this one way or the other beyond what's in the proposed budget until we are able to evaluate all of the proposals that are going to be in front of us.
Mm-hmm. This year, the commission is working with the Moral Budget Group. That's a coalition of some nonprofits who had some things to say about the budget process last year, and were not formally included in it. But this year, it looks a lot like participatory budgeting that we've seen in other local governments across the country. So how is that going? And usually in participatory budgeting, there is a set amount of money within the budget that is set aside for basically the community and those community leaders to decide where that money should be spent. Is that the model here?
So the model that we're working on this year is more what I would call community-centered budgeting, and the goal one is to try to create a long-term process that exceeds just this year in terms of how do we proactively engage the public in the county budgeting process. And 2 of the major goals that I had for this year is, one, to just try to help educate the public on what the county does and what is incorporated within the county budget, and then second, be able to get some feedback on some of the initiatives that the county is currently doing, to see what matters most to people, either to themselves, to their neighbors, to their community, to be able to get some feedback on are the things that we're focusing on, like pre-K education, like transit has been a new initiative of the county. Are these the things that people want to see? And if so, do they want to see more of it, less of it, the same amount? And I think that data is going to help us, certainly help us this year, but I think more so it helps us in future years. And there may be a point in the future where we decide we want to give even more structure to this and set aside a certain amount. But I think before we get to that point, we've first got to do a better job of getting out there and educating the public on what the county does and what makes up the budget. And then I think we've got to be willing to ask, like, what do you think about what we're doing? What should we do more of, less of, or keep the same?
So this sounds kind of like taking the pulse of the public through the Moral Budget Group on whether the county priorities that the mayor sets forth, that the commission talks about, whether those priorities are resonating with the public.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Amber Mills also when the commission was discussing this, had some reservations about it, and I believe she actually asked, where are the conservative groups that should be involved in this? Your response to that?
Well, I think I said this when she brought that up, but I mean, the good news is that the process and the survey and all of that is open to anyone, regardless of their political leanings. I think it's more important just to get general feedback of county residents and county taxpayers to be able to see what folks care about, regardless of their political orientation. So, this is always meant to be an open process. I think you can always find something wrong with trying to change a process, but to me, it's better to get out there and say, we value budget transparency, and we want to hear from anyone on what they think about the initiatives that the county has taken on, because I think that helps us do a better job as representatives, not just of one party or the other, but as representatives of the folks in our district and as the county as a whole. To one, I think, give us more confidence and be able to make bold investments if that's what the people want. But we won't know that if we don't ask.
Mm-hmm. And you've been asking through an online survey that is available to anyone to complete?
Yes, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
The survey is up, and I think it's something that we want to be able to continue well after the budget season. So that's yes.
Mm-hmm. All right. This is election season as well as budget season for you and other commissioners, and you are running in a new district with redistricting last year by the commission. For the August county general election ballot, you find yourself in District 13 instead of your current District 5. What is that like, and do you campaign as an incumbent with a twist, or how do you approach that with voters?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you followed the process, and I think we all realized how challenging it was to not make major changes in the district. And but I think it's something that I've learned to embrace, and am excited about, potentially working with many new neighborhoods and constituents. And, I think a lot of it is just introducing myself, our message, our focus, and not just talk about the things that we've accomplished over the last 4 years, but, much like we're doing with the budget, is asking people, what they care most about, and, how can I be, and how can our team be a good representative of all neighborhoods in the new district. And so it's actually been quite exciting to be able to get out and do that and talk with folks in the new neighborhoods.
How often do you have to tell them, okay, you used to be in this district, but now you're in this district?
Yeah, quite often. And, I think some of that happens when folks go to the polls and they go to the one they're used to going to, and then all of a sudden it's a new one, because the precincts also changed too, of course. And so, that's caused a little bit of confusion. But I think if we all collectively are out there educating the public on the district they're in, I think we'll be okay. But yes, no, there's definitely a lot of education that goes along with it. But while you're doing that, you're able to meet, really great neighborhood leaders and advocates, and that's something I've enjoyed doing over the last 4 years in my current district, and certainly will enjoy going forward.
Mm-hmm. You have a Republican challenger in Ed Apple on the August ballot, and both of you in the primaries ran the best way that someone can run in any election. You each ran unopposed. How much of your race going into this August ballot, the county general election ballot, is competing for Republican voters as well as Democratic voters, given the partisan divide in our nation and in our state and in parts of our county where the lines separating blue and red meet? Right.
Well, certainly we do run as partisan candidates. I am a Democrat, but that doesn't mean I don't represent independents and Republicans. And so, I think when you're out there talking about what you want to do to help represent your community, the issues have got to be the ones that people care deeply about. And a lot of that you get from actually getting out there and asking people, what they care about. And so that's really been my focus. And some of those highlights include, being able to expand pre-K education access, being able to expand, the quality of our public parks. We expanded the partnership with Shelby Farms, being able to support neighborhoods with neighborhood safety initiatives. And these are the things that really impact people, in their daily lives. And to me, you can argue like there's certainly maybe a Democratic or a Republican lens on that, but I'm certainly more about putting our community first before that. But at the same time, I have my values that I believe in, and certainly I know many of my constituents do. But I think the one thing that I found that we all agree on is that we want to make Memphis and Shelby County a better place, for everyone, but certainly for future generations. And so while I'm certain there's probably no one that would agree with me on every single thing, I think that's one thing we all can agree on. And I think we need more of that. We need folks that are willing to, work together to make our community better. And that's what I found from my constituents, and I'm happy to champion that message.
All right. A final point, as you may have heard, your colleagues across the Main Street Mall and the Civic Center Plaza on the City Council are considering whether to put a ballot question on the August ballot that would basically allow for partisan primary races for the City Council and for Memphis mayor. Would you give them any advice on whether that's a good idea?
Well, that's going to be their decision. It looks like it'll be, like you said, on the ballot. So the voters will have to decide that. To be honest, I'm not sure that that's necessarily the direction that we ought to go. But also it should be something probably for the voters to decide if they want to do that with municipal government. But I think to the point I was just making around, how do we make sure we're really focusing on the things that, matter at the local level to folks. It may be more difficult to do in a partisan way, but it certainly hasn't stopped us, hasn't stopped my effort. And so I also understand that. But my initial reaction is I'm not sure, but it is not. We already have partisan primaries on our side, so it's not certainly something that I'm probably going to wade too much into.
All right. Fair enough. Our guest has been Shelby County Commissioner Michael Whaley, chairman of the County Commission's Budget Committee. As we record this, the budget hearings in county government before the commission are about to get into the critical area of the commission discussing and then deciding what stays and what goes in that budget proposal from Mayor Lee Harris. I'm Bill Dries, and this has been On the Record.